Welcome to Blue Dirt, the podcast that digs deep into the foundation of commercial real estate investing. Unlike most real estate shows that focus on deal making and market trends, Blue Dirt gets into the nuts and bolts of what truly builds long-term value, the building itself. We break down how to spot deferred maintenance before it costs you, why a solid preventative maintenance program is a game changer, and how triple net leases can maximize your investment returns. We'll also explore the importance of strong landlord-tenant relationships and how they drive stability and growth in your portfolio. Whether you're a seasoned investor or just getting started, Blue Dirt gives you the practical knowledge to make smarter, more profitable decisions in commercial real estate. It's time to get your hands dirty and build value from the ground up. Let's dig in. Welcome to another episode of Blue Dirt Podcast, where even idiots can make a killing in commercial real estate. Today, we are talking about all things HVAC. That's right, the mechanical system in our buildings. We are joined by Cheyenne Stemen with Blue Commercial Properties. And Cheyenne, welcome to the program.
All right, thank you.
So, Don, why don't you do your intro of Cheyenne and we'll take it from there.
Yeah, that's great. Cheyenne's been working with us now probably 7 months.
Yeah, that's about right.
Yeah, came on board. Vast kind of HVAC experience, and obviously we'll let you go into that. It's been a great addition to the team because here in Florida, constant yes. HVAC issues when you're even in the colder months, we're preparing for the summer. And as we move into the summer, there's always issues that are just kind of leading up, and then summer hits and it's crazy.
Yeah.
So, been a great addition to the team and helping us provide, I think, a faster response and a higher level of quality to a lot of the tenants. So it's been a good addition to the team. So we're excited.
So the questions that I'm hoping to answer today is how you should complete HVAC inspections when you're buying a property, how you should be maintaining those HVAC systems while you own the property, and how some of these costs can be shared through your tenants. So let's kind of dive in a little bit about who you are, your background. Tell us about your experience in mechanical HVAC systems.
Sure. So I started doing heating and air conditioning about 19 years ago. And when I first started, I was just banging ductwork together. And after a bit of doing that, I decided I wanted to get into the more technical side of it. So I went to a trade school. And
which one?
It's called Tidewater Tech. It's in Norfolk, Virginia.
Okay.
Pretty decent school. I learned a lot there. So, and after that, I started just doing service tech work and,
No, I don't know. Tell me what service tech work is.
So being a service tech in this trade is, obviously people are going to call and they say, all they really usually know is my AC doesn't work.
Okay.
So you go out there, you're going to meet the customer, talk to them, gather whatever information they can provide. And then you go look at the system, start troubleshooting, determine what that problem is.
Okay.
And
give us some examples of the types of problems, or maybe the more common types of problems that you find, and quite honestly, how you troubleshoot. Where do you start? And then,
a big place to start is, number one, when we're talking to the customer, usually they know some piece of information that's going to put you in the right direction.
Okay.
I'm going to ask them, well, is there air coming out of your vents? And if they say no, that's going to direct me to look at the indoor unit.
Okay.
So.
And what's the indoor unit called? Well, let's talk about the system itself. What are the parts of an air conditioning system, inside, outside, wherever they are?
Okay. So there's several different styles of air conditioning systems. Most people in their houses are going to have what is called a split system.
Okay.
So you have the air handler on the inside, which, has the blower motor and the evaporator coil. And then you have the outdoor unit, which is, people will call it the condenser, or it's a heat pump if it's capable of that. And there's a line set that runs in between.
Okay.
That carries the refrigerant between the two units.
All right.
The other style is called a package unit.
Okay.
Where everything is in one box. It sits outside and it's just ducted into the house.
A direct duct from outside to the inside.
Yes.
Okay.
And they have rooftop package units for commercial applications. And then, of course, really popular these days is ductless mini splits.
All right.
They're super efficient. You don't have the ductwork issues, and you can run several indoor units off of one outdoor unit. So
how is a mini split different than what I know the term PTAC?
So a PTAC is what you see in a hotel room.
Okay.
It's a packaged terminal air conditioner. It is basically, when I was talking about package units, that's basically what that is, just on a smaller scale.
Okay. All right.
So,
Great. All right.
So, like I said, with the mini splits, they've become really popular because they're highly efficient. You don't have the ductwork, but then on the other hand, you might have to have one in each different room too.
Okay.
So the cost of that, it's a little bit more, but they are, and there's made a bunch of different brands. So I've always been partial to Mitsubishi myself, maybe because I went to their schools and they have really good tech support. So that's me, but there are plenty of different ones out there on the market.
Okay. So now you're going back to that in this case, house call.
Right.
So the homeowner is sharing some information, and that gives you some direction where to go. So one of them was, is it blowing air? The answer was no. Then you go here. If it is blowing air, where do you go?
Well, if it's blowing air, look at the thermostat. Is it set for AC? Is it set below whatever the house temperature is? If the indoor unit's running, then I'm going to go look at the outdoor unit. Is it running? And if it's not, then we're going to start looking at that. Do we have high voltage going into the unit? Do we have the control signal from the indoor unit going outside? So if you don't have high voltage, obviously we probably got a tripped breaker.
Okay.
If we're not getting a control signal out there, I mean, there's several different things that could be, but generally speaking, it's going to be because there's a clogged drain line.
Okay.
It's code now to put float switches on the air handler. So what that does, let me back up for just a second here. Float switches can be wired in two different ways. You can wire that float switch to where it will only shut off that outdoor unit, but the indoor unit remains running. Most technicians will usually wire them to where it kills all that 24-volt control signal going to the thermostat.
All right. At this point, we are diving so technical. So I'm gonna reel back a second because you had me at hello.
Okay, sorry.
So
about that.
Donnie, why don't you walk through the process of, let's say we're buying a building. Walk me through with Cheyenne what you guys do from a inspection standpoint.
I'll answer that a little differently. I'll tell you usually kind of what my request is and what my goal is. And fortunately, we just did this, actually twice in the past couple of weeks. We've the building to the north under contract. Basically, my goal is, what is the existing systems, right? We want to know what we're dealing with there, because there's can be a lot of good infrastructure in place, maybe even if the units are bad. We want to know what's the age of the unit, because obviously that's a significant CapEx expense if we need to replace those immediately. I want to know a couple other things. If there's a gas furnace in place and maybe we want to go to electric, I need to know those kinds of things. But really, at the end of the day, my goal when I'm looking at that is purely money, right? I want to know what my costs are when I get in there, even if they just need to be fixed, or maybe they've been well maintained and great. We know we got 10 years left out of them.
Right.
So you went over, looked at the building to the north. There was 4 different units over there. Mm-hmm. It was kind of a mix, right? There was a couple of package units, was it split systems? What were we dealing with over there?
So you're talking about this property right next to it,
192.
correct?
Yep.
Yep. So Those are all split systems.
They were? Okay.
Yeah. Even though those ones that are on that rooftop, those condensers, if you look at them from a distance, they look like a package unit, but they're not.
Cool.
So they have air handlers down inside.
Okay.
So when I go look at these things, generally the first thing I look at is the label plate. I want to know what age the equipment is, and I want to know what size, what tonnage of.
So on the label plate, is there somewhere specific? How do you tell that the name or the age and the size of those units from looking at that plate?
Most manufacturers in their model numbers there's going to be a number in there that's going to tell you what that tonnage is.
So in the model, not the serial, but the model number will have it.
That's where you're going to find the size. So a ton of AC is 12,000 BTUs.
Okay.
So if you see 036, that's 3 tons.
3 tons.
Right.
Right. Okay.
So it seems pretty straightforward. As far as the age goes.
And is that usually in the beginning, the middle, the end? Where is it in the model? Because I know there's a lot of different numbers up there, so people can get kind of confused. Is there somewhere normally it's located?
Usually within the four to six numbers, it's going to be in there somewhere.
Okay.
And you can always look this up online as well for each particular manufacturer, and they will tell you how to read their model numbers and their serial numbers.
Okay.
So the age of a unit is usually in the serial number.
Okay. So that's in the serial number. All right.
Right. And it usually starts off with, let's say, 1/8/112. So the 18th week of 2012.
Okay.
All
right.
And there may be change from manufacturer to manufacturer, but like I said, you can look all of this up.
It's a good general rule. Okay.
Right. So once we got the tonnage, what's the age of it? What refrigerant are we using?
Okay.
So
what are kind of the typical ones you see?
Well, right now, the oldest one you're probably going to see is R22. Okay. And R22 has been phased out for years.
Okay.
For me, that's a red flag. If it's that old of equipment, at some point, it's going to need refrigerant because you're going to start developing leaks in the evaporator coil, stuff like that.
Stuff. Okay.
So you're not going to be able to go get R22.
Okay.
Now, if it's a 410 system, this year they stopped manufacturing new equipment that uses 410. Now, 410 is still going to be available for a while, for a long time.
Future, yeah.
You can get repair parts. You'll be able to get the refrigerants. So,
and was that so 2025 they stopped, or was it 2024 end of 2020?
It was 2025.
Okay.
I believe it was in January.
Okay.
They did that. All right. So we want to see that. Now, once we've got all that figured out.
Now, what's the new one?
It's R454B.
Okay.
It's a propane-based refrigerant.
Okay.
Which is technically flammable, but
okay, that's good.
It's interesting though. So you could take a torch and put it to that refrigerant and it will light, but as soon as you remove that flame source off of the refrigerant, it'll go out.
Oh, okay. So you've done this?
Yeah. And I've seen the videos of it too. It's pretty cool. So commercial kitchen equipment has been using propane-based refrigerants for years. So
interesting. Okay. Did not know that.
So yeah. So we're going to look at the refrigerants, and then we start looking at the condition of the equipment itself, right?
Right.
If you go to that outdoor unit and you look at the fins that are on that condenser coil, and you rub your finger across it and they just start to crumble, that's obviously going to be an issue.
And what do the fins do? What's their purpose?
It just increases the area to transfer heat.
Okay.
So it's the same idea as having a radiator.
Yeah.
Right. So, so what's the condition of that outdoor coil? What's the condition of the indoor coil? Mm-hmm. More modern AC systems use an aluminum evaporator coil. So it reduces the amount of leaks that happen.
Okay.
But you can look inside an old unit and the old ones, you'll see rust all over the place. Mm-hmm. And that is going to start creating leaks for you.
Okay.
So.
And the leak you're talking about the refrigerant, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And that's where the obviously expensive, like R22, or they're not even making it anymore. That's where those issues come into play, where you're going to just ultimately need to replace that unit.
Right.
Very, very, very soon. Because the
Right.
second you have a leak, the cost to now refill it with refrigerant can surpass the actual replacement cost, is what we find a lot of times, depending
Yes.
on the size of the unit.
Right. I mean, they make a replacement for R22. One of them is MO99.
Okay.
So that means you got to remove all that old R22 and change. There's certain things you have to replace in the refrigerant system, and then you can refill it with MO99.
Okay.
But is it cost effective to do that on a unit that's 20 years old? I mean,
Yeah.
How much does it cost?
So the labor that's involved with it is probably going to be several hours. I mean, the part where we're going to replace in the system itself is going to be what's called a liquid line filter dryer. That is not an expensive part at all. And then the cost of the refrigerant. So, a container of MO99 is probably around $250.
Okay, so I'm more focused on the unit dying, but the reality of it is let's just say it's 5 hours worth of labor. Does that seem unreasonable? Okay, so cost per hour, then one container of the MO99.
And you won't use that entire container.
Okay, so that's $250.
Right.
And then the other line. So we might be less than $1,500 potentially.
Yes.
And so, and a new unit might be $8,000.
Right.
Now, how much life can I get? Now that's just the refrigerant. Now, of course, we have these other issues that you're talking about.
Yes.
Right. So the condenser might be on its last leg, not condenser, the
compressor.
The compressor may be on its last leg,
right.
All these other things. So I was not aware that there was a modification for an R22. So not that, but sometimes you want to extend for a certain period of time.
Right.
Like a lot of times we'll have a roof that we normally might put a new roof on, but in the example that Don and I are working on another project, we're going to have to make a whole bunch of roof penetrations. Mm-hmm. So we'd rather spend the $10,000 temporary fix.
Right.
And then in 3 to 5 years, then go spend the $110,000 to replace the roof after we've made all these penetrations. So sometimes that extend could be of greater value if there's a bigger picture involved.
There's a strategy,
yeah.
right? And we talked about 192 because he had mentioned that, and it was, well, no, the fins are all corroded and about to deteriorate. So it did make sense. And I remember maybe 2 years ago, we went out to the beach and we did retrofit a unit out there that was actually in pretty good condition.
Gotcha.
The tech was like, normally I don't recommend this, but he goes, it's actually in a really good, it's a really good condition. Let's retrofit it. I had never heard of it until then.
Gotcha.
Kind of interesting.
Well, and when you hear us talk about 192, Don and I typically will refer to that's a building address. We just don't ever say the whole address because we just typically focus on a number.
We're in too much of a hurry.
Yeah, we can't. We don't have the time to say the whole address. So
that's right.
All right. So you go out, you inspect a building that Don and I might be working on. You give us a report, and then you give us an expected dollar amount to repair them. If we need to get them replaced, that's not something that you do. You have the ability to do it, but with Blue, you don't do that. So then we go out, and you might say, "Hey, listen, out of these 4 units, and I haven't really looked at the report that you gave, but out of these 4 units, these 3 might be past their useful life." Is that what's in that scenario?
That's correct. Yes.
And then Don, you would then do what?
Then we just go out and get new quotes for replacement at that phase, and then just be on standby because we need to plan for the replacement, but we don't know how long. Right, that R22 unit might limp along for another year.
Right,
but we're prepared to act at a moment's notice. There's some things, kind of like the event space. We knew that how critical AC was to the events and continuity that we opted to go ahead, and even if we could get a little bit longer life, let's just go ahead and put the brand new units in to make sure that every event there's no issue.
Right.
So there is cases. Once again, it's all, you have to weigh the full map. You have to understand everything at play. Just like you were saying, Michael, with we're gonna make a lot of penetrations here. Let's prolong this big capex.
Right.
So definitely all situational. So we converted a unit right next door to MO99.
Okay.
So older unit, everything seemed to be in decent enough shape that we could do that. So, and we did that last winter.
Okay.
So,
All right. So you do the inspections. Then we ultimately acquire the building, and maybe we have tenants in there. Going forward, talk about the preventative maintenance services that are performed and how owners and their tenants can properly maintain these systems to extend the life.
Okay, so generally speaking, you're probably going to have a maintenance contract with whoever you use to do your heating and air conditioning. And when they come out, and especially in a commercial building, it's probably going to be tailored for that property. So if you have a rooftop package unit, it might be a quarterly maintenance. They're going to come out, replace all the filters, clean the indoor, outdoor coils, clean the drain pans, and they're going to do these operational checks. We're going to see what the amp draw is on that compressor. What is the amp draw on all the motors doing? All the electrical connections nice and tight. But the biggest thing probably around here, really, because AC season is so long, is filters and drain lines.
Do you pour bleach down the drain lines when you go? I mean, what do you do for the drain lines? Because at my house, my old house, it would back up we ultimately put a float in, but it would back up and I wouldn't know it until I had a leak through from the second floor to the first floor. Yeah. And then I had to replace sheets of drywall on the ceiling and then repaint. Right. It was always a major nightmare, and it was all my fault because I would not remember to, pour bleach down the drain.
Right. It's great a lot of people say you can use vinegar water. They make products, they make tablets and all kinds of stuff you can pour down the drain line, which is great for the drain line, but it doesn't treat the drain pan. So it's nice to have those tablets actually inside the drain pan. If you can get to that drain pan, and, a homeowner or something like that is probably not going to open up their unit and do that. But if you have a maintenance contract, ideally you would want that stuff to be in the drain pan.
Right.
And once again, there's plenty of things on the market. They make one called iFlow. Homeowner can install it in 10 minutes and it just drips the stuff into the drain line, right? But it does require an app to work.
Okay.
So is the pan before the drain line, and then how does that system work?
So on that indoor unit, that evaporator coil sets in a drain pan.
And that usually just has water running across it, right? And that's what's happening,
right?
To reduce the temperature because it's blowing air across it and cooling it.
Exactly. So when we pull that air across, it's got humidity in it. Mm-hmm. When it hits the cold temperature, that coil, obviously that humidity condenses into water, and then it drains out.
Okay.
So,
and you said package unit maybe once a quarter. Is that the same thing for a split system?
Like I said, it depends on the property, but if it's a residential thing, most companies usually set that up as 2 visits a year.
Okay.
And rooftop package units, because usually the filters are inside the units themselves. So most people aren't going up there to look at those.
Right.
As a building owner or something like that. So, but usually that's quarterly. And a lot of these rooftop package units, they have belts for the blower wheel. And those will need to be replaced, I would say once a year, but you should definitely be inspecting them every time you go out.
Right. Now, you did mention during your preventative maintenance programming that you check for amperage and loose wires.
Mm-hmm.
So do the loose wires get loose because of the vibration of the system, or how would they get loose to begin with?
Generally, that's what it is. The vibration of the unit itself could cause that to happen. And a lot of times when these things are installed, installers are not going to go around. They're not going to check the tightness of all these connections. So sometimes in shipment, these things loosen up.
Right.
And if it's a low voltage connection, it's probably the bigger one right there because somebody in the field is doing that. So that's probably a bigger failure point than, from the manufacturer.
And then amperage, how do you lose amperage?
Well, we just want to see So if I take an amp draw on that compressor, on that label plate that we were talking about earlier, it's going to tell you, okay, this is the amp draw that this thing should do. So obviously, if we're above that, there's something going on that we need to look into. And it could just because the compressor,
Such as?
Well, the compressor could just have a mechanical problem in it that's causing that to happen.
So a change in amperage would key you off to something else.
Right. So why do we have an increased amp draw? And when it comes to service technicians, there's a lot of different levels of knowledge and skill, right? So
right.
Especially if you go to an apartment complex and you got the maintenance guy out there and all he knows how to do is add refrigerant. Well, you go out there and they'll overcharge these things by, 4 pounds of refrigerant. So that's going to kill a compressor, number one. And it's also going to create mechanical damage inside that compressor. So when we're a loose electrical connection can cause an over amperage condition as well. So,
okay.
Now, you said that you would obviously checking the drain pan, the other thing. What about filters, right? Because when I first started, I always thought that the filters were really just for air quality.
Well, the air filter keeps all that dirt and whatever's in the air from getting up inside the evaporator coil. So if that evaporator coil gets clogged, it doesn't get the airflow through it. So I'm sure most of us have probably seen an AC system that's iced up. So a dirty filter can cause that. A dirty evaporator coil can cause that if it's clogged. And if it's low on refrigerant, it can freeze. But
let me ask you about the freezing, because we have another property that we have been told when it's an event space, and so when this one door gets left open for an extended period of time while they're loading and into the space, the unit has frozen up, or at least that's how they described it, and it turns off, and it has to wait so long, I guess, to unfreeze. It's not a broken system; it just froze up temporarily. Walk me through that process of what actually took place in that scenario.
I kind of find it a little unusual that somebody just leaving a door open would cause a unit to freeze up. But having said that, if the door is open and this unit never shuts off because that door is open,
right,
I can see where that could create that condition. That it's just running and running and running.
But it wouldn't. Well, so again, this is all I'm told, and so that's why I'm curious. So if it was left open for 2 hours during a very hot day, is that long enough for that?
I don't really think so.
Don, I mean, but isn't that what you've been told?
Yeah. No, I mean,
we're talking about a specific property at 716,
yeah.
But and so this
and
is
is there a time that it could happen? I mean, is it 8 hours? Is it?
Well, I think the only way that could happen is we're dropping the air temperature that we're pulling into the return so much that it doesn't have enough heat to transfer to that refrigerant. So it's dropping those pressures down and down and down until it gets to the freezing point.
Okay.
So,
the good thing is this year when it happens, you're here.
That's right.
So we get to
right.
we get to throw you at the problem.
That's right.
You get to tell them they're liars.
Well, I'm at the very least, I'm going to assume that when you go troubleshoot during an event, you are going to be dressed better.
Usually I show up in flip-flops. I show up to every
right.
I do not like that. I think that when we go on properties, we need to look the part. And in this case, I need you probably in a bow tie.
Oh, well.
So
at least a tuxedo.
That's right. That's right. Right. All right. So let's kind of got a couple other questions that I want to ask. What's the difference, if there is a difference, between putting a unit on the roof or on the ground, or doesn't it really matter? It's just an owner preference.
That's just an owner preference. A few years ago, there was a huge problem with people stealing AC units because of the salvage value of them. So
$7, $8. What?
Condenser coil, they could probably get $40-$50 out of it. So I had a service call one day. This was in Virginia. It was a church. They said, we don't have any AC in the whole building. You get out there and they all package units, all on the ground. I walked back there and every single coil had been cut out of like 5 units.
Right. And
So-
what was the cost? And this is how sad this is. $40 to $50 is what they likely got in scrap. What did it cost per unit on average to replace it in today's dollars?
Let's say between 10, 15 grand.
So here you have people stealing stuff for 50 grand. They don't care about your money.
$50.
And
50
then
bucks.
you have to go spend $10,000 to $15,000 to replace that whole unit. It's horrific. And I will tell you, that's actually the reason why I'm very comfortable putting them on the roof.
Mm-hmm.
Now, on the roof, it has its own set of issues. You've got to make sure that the roof is structurally able to support these units, number one.
Yes.
Number two, they've added new code that if it's so many feet from the edge, you have to have a railing.
That's correct.
I don't know how many feet that is.
I want to say it was 12 off the top of my head.
Okay.
That may not be correct, though.
All right. So there you do have some additional costs of railings. And then the next thing is if it's a package unit, are those the ones with curbs?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, they are.
And then the other ones you can have a stand, and that would be a split system where they sit on a stand.
Right. Yes.
Okay. And then the whatever, they go through the roof and then into
the
a
decking.
air handler,
Yes. So the line set
the line set.
is
Yeah.
going to go through the roof. And obviously the electrical too, the low voltage. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
So I did have a question too, as far as the hurricane stands. That's all we've really ever known. In other areas, do you know if that's code that they have to? Is the metal stand kind of code now, or is it really in Florida because of hurricanes and stuff? I mean, hence why they're called.
I didn't even know it was
hurricane
called a hurricane stand.
stand. That's what I've always called them.
I
Maybe
think
they're
that's
called
probably a Florida thing.
Is it? Okay.
And
the other thing too that we've learned at another building that we took over is if you're going to have them on the rooftop, I always love the cage that goes around them, because if you get one of those random kind of hailstorms, that hail just hammers on those fins
yes.
and dents them really badly. So
Do we get hail here?
I mean, we've gotten enough where it's worth the nominal extra
What
fee.
cage are you talking about? I
I'm
haven't
talking
seen.
about like if you were up on top of 1101,
Yeah.
all those units up there,
Yeah.
all those units. If you've sent me photos,
Yeah.
you said what the and it was from hail.
Oh.
So all that in it, I got a quote. I mean, we're talking. I don't even remember how much an AC unit. It's called 700,000 in AC units, and to put the covers on them, the cages,
Yep.
we're talking less than $5,000
For all of them.
for all.
Because that one has like 30 units or something.
Yeah, there's a ridiculous amount. Yeah, you probably know better than I do at this point. How many units are up
Yeah.
there?
So this cage is not a security cage like we would normally see on the ground.
Correct. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm talking like a shield, more like a shield type thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
Well, I was going to say for commercial rooftop package units, most manufacturers have a hail guard that they can put on there that they make for that. So it's just not a coil that's sitting there. It's just basically a slotted cover that screws
And that's
on it.
that's exactly what I'm talking about. So,
And it doesn't encompass the entire system. It's just over the
just on
it's
those
just
sides.
the guard.
Mhm.
Right.
I got you.
And you've
Okay.
seen them a million times, you just didn't even realize.
Right.
Well, right. And so, and I know that for a couple of restaurants a long time ago, we paid from the no, actually I take that back. We had them shipped from the manufacturer to this one place that coated the coils for the salty air. It happened to be near the beach. It was a couple of restaurants, fast food. We coated them first. We shipped them to Mobile, where they had a coating facility. They applied some coating before it went on the rooftop, and that was to extend the life of those coils.
Right. And speaking of that, they make aftermarket products just for that. So there's one called Gulf Coast Blue, I believe. It just comes in an aerosol can, and you can spray it directly on the coil, so it protects that coil. And they also make what's called a corrosion grenade. So like a boat motor has a zinc anode.
Yep.
It's basically the same thing. It just bolts onto that suction line, that refrigerant line that goes in between the units. So that's another way of prolonging life.
Do we put that blue this coastal blue on the units that we have close to the coast?
I do not believe there are. It is on there. It's probably a good idea to do it. I know there's one unit right outside here that it looks like somebody had started to do that, but.
Oh, that one came that way.
Oh, did it?
Yeah, it was coded when we bought it.
Oh, okay.
And is there certain ones is there certain manufacturers that would come with it pre-sprayed on there? I mean, is it something that when I'm calling to get a new unit installed that I need to have them do that as part of it? How does that work?
I believe Train does that. I think Carrier does it too, but that is something we have to check with each individual manufacturer.
Okay. But it's not like the vendor themselves is usually doing it before they install. It's usually the manufacturer.
Right.
Okay.
So, but like when I was doing heating and air conditioning around here, if they sold a new system, the customer could elect to say, okay, we want that corrosion preventative thing on there. And that part of the installation was spraying that coil.
Okay.
So
interesting.
Nice upgrade. $5 can. You want that special corrosion resistant? It's super cheap, only $1.99.
That's it.
And here's your can.
That's right.
So, Don, do you have anything else?
No, I mean we definitely have a lot more we could talk about with AC, so maybe we'll do another one.
Well, I got to tell you what, I learned a lot. I thought I knew a lot. I mean, I guess I know some, but this was really helpful, especially about I really never really thought about the curb package units versus the hurricane stand units. I really didn't think that one was a package and one was a split. So that's kind of something that would help me today.
Yeah. Good deal.
All right. Well, that wraps up another episode of our Blue Podcast. We thank you for joining us, where even idiots can make a killing in commercial real estate. That's a wrap for this episode of Blue Dirt. We're here to help you build smarter, invest wiser, and create long-term value in commercial real estate, one solid foundation at a time. If you found today's insights useful, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you know somebody who could benefit from these discussions, share Blue Dirt with them. Got questions or topics you'd like us to cover? Reach out. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, keep digging deep, stay sharp, and remember, real value is built from the ground up. See you on the next episode.